see. I always wait till that says it started.
Okay.
But we're live now, I'm sure. And that means nothing.
Does it tell you like who's on and like who's
If
watching?
they comment, you'll see it.
Okay.
All right, welcome to Retro Bar Podcast, episode 6 already. Time flies when you're having fun.
Absolutely.
And amazingly enough, out of 3 of those 6, we had guests. And we have a guest today, and we'll get right to her. But before we even do that, speaking of guests, next Friday we have nobody lined up. So, if you're out there, I'm going to get that out right off the bat. So if you only watch 2 minutes of this and you want to be a guest, it's available next Friday. The week after, we have a guest. Also, quick shout out to my co-host, Paul. He got a, last Saturday, the Ephrata Elks Lodge had him on hand and presented him with, what was it, Distinguished Citizen of Ephrata for 2021. 2021. So at least one of us 2 co-hosts is now distinguished. One is distinguished, one is disillusioned, possibly deranged.
How much did you have to pay for that?
So anyway.
That was very...
that's an honor. That is an honor.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd get that in there. Now, our guest...
Before we, just one shout out to the 3 officers. One that was killed in Lebanon.
I saw a little of that. I don't
know a lot of details.
I did see that.
Yes. Fellow officers out
and,
there.
Paul, having been a police officer, and us both knowing a fair amount of police officers, that's a damn shame. Really.
Yeah, it is. And we had the two troopers that were killed in Philly.
Yeah,
And so it's not been,
not been
2 weeks.
Yeah, really.
It's been a tough one. So thoughts to them.
Right. Okay. Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Also, you'll notice we got a tablecloth today. My wife took it upon herself to spruce us up a little bit, I guess.
Little springtime.
Yeah. So anyway,
getting better every time we're getting a little better.
We got heat. We got a tablecloth.
We got a background here.
One of these days we'll have makeup artists.
Here we go.
You're gonna make him up as an alien.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, our guest today, Candace Reynolds, is here to discuss foster care system and child abuse prevention. And again, we both got to know Candace because she also, much like Roberta, tends bar at Old Republic. And the funny thing about it is, we hang out at a bar, and you think of these bar ladies as just being bar ladies, but honestly, they got a lot more going on than showing up and tending bar. I believe everybody there at Old Republic sort of just does it as a little part-time gig to go hang out and make a little money. But it's like not their life. They all have real lives beyond that. So Candace is here, and I guess we'll let her, all right, we'll start out. Where'd you go to high school?
No, I'm actually from Indiana.
Oh, okay.
I graduated high school in a little town called Pendleton, Indiana, which is like north of Indianapolis in 99. And then I moved out here with my family in 1999 when my dad got transferred out here to Ephrata.
All right.
So.
And were you still in school at that point?
No, I had graduated.
Oh, okay.
So, and I was planning on just living here for a little bit and then going back to Indiana to go to college. And then I ended up not doing that and working for 2.5 years. And then I decided to go back to school and went to Millersville and graduated then from Millersville with a bachelor's degree in social work.
Okay.
Well, lucky for us, you stayed local.
Local, yeah.
That's, all righty. Well, that's interesting. So you actually work now for who?
Bethany Christian Services.
Alrighty.
I work as the outreach coordinator for their Safe Families for Children program that they have, and I'm the outreach coordinator for Lancaster County.
So that means you check families out before they're allowed to be a foster person, or?
So we are actually Safe Families for Children. Our goal is family support and stabilization, foster care prevention, child welfare deflection. So our goal is to work with families before the foster care system becomes involved and the kids need to be taken away. There are times where foster care is appropriate, but there are often a lot of times, 70% of the children and referrals that the foster care system get are for neglect, and neglect can be a magnitude of things like homelessness, maybe not enough food or not getting to school, like those kind of things. And if we feel like if we can wrap them around a support system and have volunteers that can support those families, most of our families are socially isolated, meaning they don't have a support system or a safe support system that they can call on to help them with their children.
Okay.
And when you don't have a support system, it takes a village, they say.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
the old saying.
Right.
And I feel like nowadays they say it takes a village, but then there's like no village.
Yeah, the
you
village
know?
is quarantined.
The village,
Yeah.
oh yeah, COVID
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
affected
Yeah.
that village.
Wow.
So we're trying to build that village around our families.
Okay.
Our goal is to try to catch them upriver before the abuse and neglect,
Okay.
or before the neglect.
So
becomes
you're
too
working
intense.
with families with their own natural children prior to the children needing to go to a foster.
Correct.
So you're helping them in their own home. You're not necessarily going out and interviewing people who want to be foster parents.
So so my job, I do case management, I do community outreach, and I do church engagement, and I also do donor engagement with my outreach coordinator title. Because even though we're through Bethany Christian Services, we are 100% relied on donations and
Okay.
grants to have our ministry, and we call it a ministry program in the Lancaster County area. I'm actually part of the Central PA team, which includes York. Shout out to Tiffany Knoll and
Go
Dauphin
Tiffany.
County. I think they might be watching. Nikki
Yeah.
Condon, Becca, and then my
Just-
supervisor, Jessica Reed. So that's my whole team.
Feel free to comment,
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
If
you're
you're
watching,
out there,
ladies,
if
you
you're
wanna
out
say
there and you
something.
really even don't know what to comment,
Yeah.
just give a thumbs up if you can hear us, because
Yeah.
I'm positive you probably can. But just in case you can't, give us a message so we know.
Yeah, and if
Yes.
you have any questions, feel free.
Yes.
to,
Yeah.
chime
Type in a
and,
question. If any of this that we're talking about concerns you, or you have a question about it, by all means, type your question and we will address it. So
So
Very
we
good.
try to wrap families with who are with a community of people who are trying to navigate a difficult situation, and we do offer respite care. We're one of the only programs that offer any kind of respite care for families and children. And respite can be a few hours a day, or it can be a few months. Like I just recently, there's Tiff.
all righty.
All right,
They can
good
hear us.
job. I recently just started what we call a hosting yesterday, and it's for an infant, and the parents are homeless right now.
Okay.
So they are actually currently living on the streets
Okay.
of downtown Lancaster, and they needed a safe place for their kid to go. And children and youth would end up having to have taken that child, and the only issue is they don't have a house.
Yes. Right.
And so for them to go into the foster care system, it costs us the tax dollars is how much it costs in tax dollars to have children in the foster care system, and then it takes about 18 months for parents to get their kids back.
Oh, okay.
And then in our
So-
situation, it would be they don't lose custody of their kids.
Mhm.
We have it broken down to it costs about $1,500 per hosting, which I can't remember the exact numbers for foster care placement, but it's significantly less. And then the parents can get their child back as soon as they get stable housing
Sure.
or into a shelter.
Okay.
And then the goal is then for that family to continue to be extended family-like support systems for that family, because there are times when we get referrals and the children are returned, but they still need that help with that support system. If they want to pick up extra shifts on the weekend. A lot of my parents work 2 to 3 jobs, and childcare is another issue right now.
Right. Yeah.
And
Well, yeah. A lot.
not
I mean,
having
childcare,
childcare.
as expensive as it is, you a lot of times it doesn't pay you to work if you need to use childcare, because it's costing you more than you're earning.
yes.
Yes.
Yes. Well, and there is assistance out there for childcare, but you have to make a certain amount of money. So it kind of like keeps you under a certain amount too, because then they're like,
Right.
I can pay a copay, which might be $20 a month or a week per kid,
Right.
as opposed to hundreds of dollars per kid.
right.
But then they need to stay under that budget to
Right.
get there, and if you go over that threshold, just even a little bit, you're
Yeah.
cut off, and then
Yeah.
they can't.
So
they
you go from
financially can't
20
do it.
bucks a week to full price. There's
Yeah.
no 20 to 40 to 60.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So and there again, the system is made to not allow people. You either got to earn under this,
Right,
or you're going to pay this much.
right.
And so, it doesn't promote doesn't motivate anybody, because why should I earn a little bit more knowing I'm going to have to pay a lot more?
Right.
You know, it makes no sense.
Right.
And it's that's not the only part of our grand system that causes people to
Yes.
be in that mindset of, well, why should I work? Because if I work, I'm going to have to pay more for this.
Right.
If I don't work, I get it for nothing.
Yeah.
So I have some questions on you have a family, okay?
Yeah.
That's homeless, right? So
Yeah.
a couple questions is like Homes of Hope. That's
Homes of
one
Hope.
organization, right? That helps. I'm just wondering how much you work with them, and like I'm not sure how old the child is. I know like Francie Weicker at the high school at Ephrata. Ephrata does a fantastic job at helping homeless, and she's passionate about making sure they have a place to live. And I know she works really hard at just exactly what you're talking about, finding, whether it be they came across hard times or they had a fire in their house,
Right.
and
Right.
whatever, and now they're on the street and they need a place to stay, and you know they have Red Cross, but she is huge in helping. So how much do you work with the schools or the churches, like the homes? Homes
So
of like,
I do try to refer to those programs. A lot of them are waiting lists. They're not emergency. And there's currently like this mom, and there's no really emergency shelter for her to stay in right now. So she is trying to get in with, she has what's called a chart worker. That's how Lancaster County does it. You have to call 211, which is like United Way's system. If you're homeless, you call 211, then you get a chart worker, and they can give you a list of shelters that you can reach out to. And then like for Water Street, they have certain days where they have intakes for either just a mom or a father.
So it is, some
Or a
of them are
man.
kind of restricted into like how many people you have in your family and the ages.
Yes.
They are.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so there's not many shelters that will take boys over the age of 12.
Okay.
So if it's a single mom and she's got teenage sons, like they would have to live on the men's side of Water Street. There's a handful of shelters, but all of those shelters that do take the older kids, they're not emergency shelters. You have to apply. There's a process and things like that. So most of the shelters and those programs you apply for.
Yeah.
But the waiting lists are pretty large.
Pretty long, and I do, now that you say that, I do remember them talking about having meetings.
They're great programs.
To approve certain people to live in, because they are limited in the amount of houses they have. Okay.
Well, and right now with the housing market the way it is, it's really hard. Even if you have like a Section 8 voucher, people are having a hard time with Section 8 vouchers, even trying to find a place to rent. It's crazy. I saw a meme the other day, and it was like, I won't be approved for a mortgage for $950 a month, so I'll just go pay rent that's $1,600 a month or something like that. You know what I mean? Like that's, and they're like, okay, that makes sense. You know. So.
Now, do most of the people that you work with approach you themselves, or do they get reported by a neighbor who says, hey, this kid is being left alone? Or
so most of my referrals come from other community organizations. When you asked if I work with schools, I'm currently partnering in the Solanco area with the school district and some churches, and a very large church, to really build this community support for the families in the Solanco school district who are kind of on that cusp and could need those additional supports. Like the one family we're working with has it's somebody who needs to get to work at 4 a.m, and then they have older children who go to middle school and then a elementary school age child, and then the older kids weren't wanting to leave the elementary school age child home, so they were missing school. So we have a support system to get the 2 older kids to school and a safe place for the elementary school child to go until it's school time. And like those are like the situations that we do to try to support families, because then that single parent is getting in trouble by the school district because the kids are missing school, and then they're going to get fined, and then and they can't take off work. And so, and like what I see a lot too with like single parents is, even if they have the childcare and they have a job, like if their child is sick, and if you have multiple children that are under the age of 5 and they're in a daycare, if one's sick, and then they'll call you and say, oh, they have fever or they had diarrhea, you have to come get this kid. Well, they're working, they're clocking into work, they don't have it, so we're trying to get them like somebody that could come pick up that kid for them, and those like natural support systems that possibly you or I would have
Yes.
if we were working.
You
and,
call, some family member of some sort, and they would take care of it.
come
for
and
you
pick
when
up the
they
kid
don't
for
have
you.
that.
Yes. So a lot of our
Yeah.
parents are what we call socially isolated, and then we work with our volunteers. They don't get paid to do it. They're called host families. They do go through a process to become approved host families. So
Yeah,
I do
right.
have to do that. That's like my church engagement volunteer piece side. So I try to recruit volunteers through churches because we are a faith-based organization, and then I have to onboard them, and there's a process for that. There's like an application. You have to submit references, all
Yeah.
of your clearances,
Absolutely, that's
driving records.
as it should be.
yeah,
yes,
and it should.
Well, yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, just to make sure that we're putting them in
Well,
safe
right,
homes
right.
and
Yeah, they
things
gotta
like
be
that.
safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if somebody becomes a foster parent, then they actually, I shouldn't say make money, but they get a
They get paid.
stipend.
Yeah,
for
they
that,
get a
right?
stipend
and,
for that.
and for each kid. I mean, I remember that, and this goes long time ago, but there used to be this family up in Reinholds that had like, I don't know, 3 or 4 foster kids. And I didn't really know the family, I didn't know the kids, but people used to just say, oh, well, they just do that because they're getting all this money for doing that. And I don't know, I guess it depends how well they're taking care of the kids. How often would they get checked up on? Like,
and for children, I believe it's once a month. They have to
Okay.
go see the kids.
Okay,
Monthly,
and
and if they're in a foster care situation. Ours, we have to see them weekly
okay,
in our program. We see them
Okay.
weekly, but we're also like, I don't have as large of a caseload. I mean, I have a bunch of things on my plate, and like, because I do church engagement, donor engagement, marketing, recruiting, volunteers, and case management, and then I do community outreach to try to like find out what programs are out there to support my clients, and then also for how I can support other people in other programs and get my word out there for referrals. So that keeps me pretty busy. But
The children, youth, their caseworkers. Yeah, I would imagine that's if their job is just X amount of kids.
Yes.
And they're not doing everything that you're
doing right.
So they have more kids, and that could run down an area where they just don't have the manpower to.
They don't. I mean, I know
to
right
get
now
out to the houses. Maybe
there's
it's been tough.
like 20 openings in Lancaster County.
And it seems like
or something like
that is the norm.
Yeah.
It's a tough.
There's a lot of
you're dealing
burnout.
with it, yeah.
And in children and youth, you're working with families that you have to work with. At my job, like I can say to them, like we want to work with families who are trying to create a stable home and have that stable home for their kids ongoing. They just need a support system and somebody to walk alongside them. So at children and youth, though, if they end up taking the kid and they're in the foster care system, the parents have to work with them, and it's a lot different when you're working with parents
I know
who
Robin
want
Boyer
to.
she has her hands full
Yes, she
with
does.
with the limited amount of people she has working there, and the amount of kids,
They have some really
and
good
like you
staff
said, the
in there,
burnout, because
Mhm.
it is a tough when you're seeing little kids going through this, and wow, it just rips you up.
It does.
And I only did it in school for a short amount, again, and a lot of other things going on, but I can't imagine that's your full-time job. That's tough.
It is tough. I
Yeah.
did children and youth when I first graduated college. I was an intake caseworker for Cumberland County Children and Youth, which meant I would go investigate child abuse and neglect cases that would come in.
Yeah.
So I would have those cases for like 60 days, and it is a lot.
That is tough.
It is a lot to be knocking on the door and you're like, hi,
Yeah.
I'm here to talk about we got a referral, and a
Well,
lot of
that's-
them
and
are scared to do it.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask, like, it seems like for the most part, the families you're working with to try and help out, find a babysitter, find whatever, are probably grateful that you're helping. But there's probably also the cases where you show up, like you're saying, at a house where, hey, we're coming to take your kid because you're not cutting it here. And
Mhm.
I assume they're not all that receptive to that.
Right.
idea.
There's a difference between it being a voluntary program and an involuntary
Yeah.
program. And
Yeah.
ours is, and there are families out there that will call children and youth. We do have, and we will get referrals from them because of and they're like, you know what, like this is appropriate for you because this family just needs this additional support system. It's not something that children and youth really needs to come in and have eyes on. They just need this additional support system. So we're always trying to recruit volunteers because once a volunteer gets connected with 1 or 2 families, that's about what they can handle on top of what they have going on in their own
Right. I
personal
mean,
lives.
it would be
So our
awfully.
turnover rate for volunteers is always like.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't even have any kids at home, but I don't know that I could I mean, if I really, really wanted to, but I'd have to give up things if I was going to go pick up a kid from school
Yeah,
and do
right.
this and do that.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, that's a very big commitment
It is.
to basically offer to take care of somebody's kid that's not your own.
Right.
I mean that. I mean
My
that's very
families-
very generous.
Oh my gosh, I
That's-
call our host families angels, because some, like the one host family I had the one time, it was two working parents. They had 3 boys themselves in a 2-bedroom house, and there was a mom who was going into the hospital to deliver a child, and she had 4 other kids, and she needed a place for those 4 kids to go while she was in the hospital. I get a lot of referrals like that. So, because her support system, it could be like her mother works and her mom can't take off work because she needs the money, or her mom might be on Section 8 housing and she can't bring kids into her home because she'll lose her house and her Section 8 voucher.
So what is that? I mean, I never heard of Section 8.
Oh,
If I
Section
did hear
8
it's a
is
Section
through
8.
the government. It's kind of like a you, based on your income, you pay a lower rate for your rent.
Oh, okay.
So it's 30% of your income depending on what it is.
But then
you're
you're
the
not allowed to
government,
bring a kid in,
you're not.
even if it's a family member.
No, the vouchers are for like let's say you have 4 kids, and then you would have a voucher for 5 people, and then that's like a 3-bedroom place that you have, and then they will give you up to this amount of money per month to cover most of the rent. And
Okay.
you sometimes you can be assessed 30% or lower of the rent.
All right.
With the landlord, I would imagine getting
Has
the
to.
full amount. He gets
Yes,
the full
the
amount. So
landlord gets
whatever
the full amount.
the tenant is not paying,
Correct.
they pay.
They
So,
pay.
Yeah.
Yes, but with that, and because of like even with like fire ordinances and things like that, as how many people and like
Oh, yeah.
and even like different what's the word I'm looking for? Municipalities have
Yeah.
rules on like
Restrictions on
how many people can
yeah.
live in a home, and like
Yeah.
Right.
How many bathrooms, how many bedrooms.
yes, and like that kind of
But
stuff.
even
So,
now you were saying, okay, this lady had 4 of her own kids and she got 5 coupons or whatever. But what if that lady lived alone and was getting rent assistance and brought a kid in for a week, not expecting to get another coupon, just
so
give
they do that.
Okay.
They do that, but like typically, like if you were to bring, like if it's like, so like in this mom situation, she's got 5 now kids, like under the age of 5.
Now and I'm not judging anybody, but if you're having this much difficulty handling and finding somewhere for your 4 kids, why are you having a 5th kid?
Well,
I mean, that's I don't want to
It
judge,
is.
but
Yeah. So as a social worker, we're strengths based, and for us, we don't. We talk about like, okay, so usually what I will say sometimes with my families is just like, hey, right now you're having a hard time providing stability for the children you do have now. What are
Right.
we doing so that we're not bringing more kids
Right.
in until we're stable?
and do you really need 4 dogs in there too?
Yeah.
That's-
Yeah, well, yeah, that could be a thing too. The dogs and the pets, that can be hard for people. But yeah, that can be, it's hard sometimes even for myself to, like, when I get a case, take myself out and my own judgments and thoughts
Yeah.
and like
Right. You have to.
and like kind of like think, because a lot of the families I work with are single parents. They actually grew up in the foster care system themselves, and they don't have the right tools. A lot of them
Well, they
have a
don't.
lot
Yeah,
of trauma.
I guess they
don't
It's
have-
all they know.
It's all they know. They don't.
And so it really isn't
know
their
anything
fault.
more
Right.
than chaos and
Yeah.
Yeah.
yes. There we go. There's my boss.
Yes.
Shout out to our volunteer families who take
'cause
children
they,
into their home. So my one family.
They're bigger men than me.
Yeah. Well, so this family I was talking about, they're angels, because then she ended up taking a week off work. Took a week's vacation to host these kids, in her home for this mom, and it was like, it was just amazing to me that somebody would do that. Would
No, it is.
take a
It
week's
is.
vacation and open their home, and
To
the
kids
disruption
that
of having 4
They don't
kids
even know.
that you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like you're bringing your nephew in.
And
or
you're providing the meals. You're
Yeah.
not getting paid, and then if there's visits, you're driving to the parent to see the parents because if they don't have transportation or whatever.
Now, what happens to? You said if a kid goes into foster care, he's not allowed. They're not allowed to go back to their original family for 18 months.
Typically, the return, like, because then there's like court systems, because you have to go to court hearings. You always get like a family service plan. There's goals the family has to be working on.
Now, what if that kid, say the kid is 12, old enough to know what's going on, and he just despises that family, or maybe they're even doing something that nobody else knows about, and he wants out. What
Of his
happens to him
family.
if he is really acting out and maybe even running away because he can't stand it there, but he can't go back to his real family for 18 months? What then happens to that kid?
Well, typically, I would say 12-year-olds end up in group homes, or they end up in
Okay.
the youth intervention
Okay.
center. You know what
Yeah,
that is? The youth
homeless
intervention
side,
center.
yeah. Mhm.
There's
Yeah.
it breaks my heart. Kids that whose families aren't stable enough for them, if there's not like a family member or a foster family that's willing to take them, because most people want younger children, not the older kids.
Right.
So then
right.
half of the youth intervention center is for kids that are adjudicated delinquent, which means they're in trouble and they're in prison, and the other half is it's like a group home. So these kids are taken out of their home, which who knows what they've seen, and then they're put
Absolutely.
into the other half of the youth intervention center, which is basically a juvenile detention center.
Yeah.
And like that's what we're telling them, that's all they're worth.
Well,
That's
You know,
I mean,
and
and
I
why?
just-
Why? Just because kids' parents have issues, and they end up at this homeless shelter for kids. Why refer? I mean, if they didn't actually commit a crime, why is it known as a detention center?
Well, they have it's the youth intervention center, so half of it
Oh, okay.
is like,
Okay.
but that's
Yeah,
it's
half of it's locked down.
Like
half of
like
it
Barnes
is the
Hall, or
homeless.
I mean,
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
like,
it's
uh,
like Barnes Hall. Yeah, I've taken kids to both sides, and
Yeah.
and if I remember, you're entering through the same door.
Yeah.
and
You are.
and it's just that you're taken because they have to be checked for weapons and all that kind of stuff. It's
Mhm.
a normal thing at the lockdown facility. But then they can go to the homeless side.
They
Now, I've
can go
never
to
actually been inside on the homeless side to see what that looks like, so I don't know if it. I would assume it looks different because the lockdown side.
is
It's
Yeah.
a lockdown side.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of issues that are coming in there
Mhm.
with kids, and obviously they've have committed a crime, so
Correct.
that's why they're there. So
I do get a lot of referrals for older kids whose parents will call me and they'll say, "Look, my kid's running away.
mhm.
My kid is acting out. We're having issues with them. I just need a break." But that would be inappropriate for us because, like, we do work with our volunteers. We're not a therapeutic setting,
right.
so we can't take in kids that are running away or acting out, and the parents are having a hard time controlling them. But there is a need for that for those parents.
And a lot of times when they would come to the school and they would hit me up, of course they were like, "You're the cops, and my kid is really doing bad stuff." And like, okay, so is there a family member that we can think of that they can
Yes.
do like a reset?
Right.
Okay, let's separate. You guys are banging heads all the time. Let's separate, do a reset, and see if we can start over, and then give it a shot in X amount of time.
Yeah.
So that kid stops acting out, goes to school, because it's usually why
Mm-hmm.
we're involved, is because they're not going to school,
Mm-hmm.
and that doesn't all fall at some of it fell on the cops.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it got to a point they missed so much that it finally got to our level, but and you do everything you can not to have them go to court and get fined, because that isn't always the answer. You're not going to arrest your way out of a problem.
Right. Right.
It's just not. So, way back with the DA's office, and again, Francie Riker was fantastic. We created a program where if your kid was to the point of getting a fine, instead of going in to the court, you would go to a program that we ran on a Saturday morning, and the DA created a video system and answer a question as to, okay, so why is the parent had to go and the kid had to go.
Oh, okay.
So it was an interaction with them, and we ran it through 3 school districts.
Was Ephrata one of them?
Yes, we were one, Hempfield, and to give it a shot to see if it worked. And we did have a really good, we did not have a lot of returns. So the
Okay.
kids did learn something, and the parents learned something, because there was questionnaires.
Yeah.
Why are they running away?
Right.
Or why are they not going to school? Or what's the problem? What do we need to try to solve it?
Right. There's always something underlining.
There is.
And if we can build some healthy communication there,
Right. And like you said, you're not
And
the
the
organization that they go to say, look, I need a break for my kid.
Mm-hmm.
That's not, So there is other people working at the same thing, but hopefully it can all work together to help
And
make
that's what we
things
try
more
to do
healthy.
a lot of collaboration with other
Mhm.
agencies, because like I can do so much and I can help with the children and the respite and building a team of volunteers, but I'm not a housing specialist.
Yeah.
I'm not a mental health specialist. I'm not a drug and alcohol counselor. So like we
Yeah.
use, because sometimes some of our families need different services,
Oh, yeah.
and all of those services or
Yeah.
whatever, and then I just refer them to the people that specialize in that industry or field, and then we kind of work together to be like, okay, so you're doing this part of this. And,
Yeah.
I feel like foster care has come a long way with trying to collaborate, and they're also, I feel like, looking for programs like Safe Families that they can use to help keep children out of foster care too. Like some of our chapters have contracts with the children and youth agencies, so we can help keep families together and family support and stabilization.
Just to go back to the basics just for a second, what's the difference between foster care and adoption?
So foster care, the children are in the home, and the goal is reunification
Reunification
with their parents.
Okay.
Adoption means that the parents are not going to be reunified. Probably their rights have been terminated or going to be terminated, and those children are open now for adoption and can be adopted by either the foster parent if that was what they were wanting to do, or they will try to find another family for that child.
So 2 questions there. Does the organization you work for do that? And do you see that happen is a lot? Like you foster a kid and it goes well, okay, and things do not go well with the parents, and it ends up that you want to adopt this kid. Does that happen a lot? That it begins as a foster and then moves up into that, or?
So Bethany Christian Services does have foster care and adoption. So Bethany Christian Services has a lot of programs that help support families in our community. One of them is the foster care adoption. Then we have Safe Families. We have Renew. We help with refugees. We have counseling and things like that. But I think that a lot of people got into foster care as a way to adopt kids.
That's what I would think,
the
but I don't
reason,
know.
if you think about foster care, it really is just to provide that temporary break and a safe place for those kids to go so those parents can get the stability. But it doesn't often happen that way.
Is there a time limit, like that 18-month thing? But like if somebody is a foster parent for say a 2-year-old, and is there a limit on the amount of years that they can be a foster parent to that same kid, or is there a point where it says, okay, you either got to adopt this kid or it's going somewhere else? Or
so the parents would have a goal, and if they're not working on their family service plan, the parents, if their kids are in foster care, then the courts would move to terminate those parents' rights. And there is a time frame that parents have their goal plan for, and I don't know the exact, because I don't really work in that system anymore.
I mean, not the natural, but the foster care parent. If they have a kid and there's nowhere for that kid to go for years, are they allowed to keep the same kid as a foster kid for say 15 years? Or must they adopt it at that point? They can just continue calling it a foster kid. Because, and again, I don't know how this all works, but if everything's working out with your kid and it's a foster kid and you're making $500 a month to have this kid, and then you adopt the kid, that payment stops. What would be the real purpose of adopting it rather than just continuing as a foster parent?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I know the exact answer.
I guess that would
because I feel like there are times where people can do that, but I think majority of the time they ended up adopting. There are still if you adopt, there's post-permanency resources. There is some. It's not a lot, but there is some, but not like you would get they'd be on your medical insurance. Then you'd have to add them to that because
now if that's a good question.
They got
state
insurance.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say bringing that up. I never really thought of that, but if you are a foster parent and yes, you're getting X amount of dollars a month to do that, but your foster child can't be on your insurance. What happens if they do get sick?
They
they're-
have this.
So they're not paying out of pocket for that kid as
Right.
part of being a foster parent.
Correct.
The kid has CHIP or whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, they have like some kind of medical assistance
Right.
through the state, and but then if you adopt, so I don't really know the answer to that question. That's a good question.
I didn't know if there was
that's
like you
a good
can't
question.
be a
Yeah.
foster parent to the same kid for
No, you can.
for
Well, and I wouldn't think that they'd want to take that kid out of there, and you figure it kind of
If a
falls.
child is being fostered, there is a time limit with CUIF and PA. I believe it is around 22 months for
Okay.
that one child.
Okay, great
Thank you,
answer.
Tiff.
That's a good
Yeah.
information because I thought, why would somebody, if
And
they're
then what, they
making
have
money,
to adopt Tiff? Is that what the thing is? After 22 months?
Probably have to make a decision one way or the other.
Yeah, because then the parents' rights are going to be terminated.
Right.
I guess.
At that point, the
'Cause the
parents'
courts
rights
are
are
only
they're going
gonna-
to step in and say
Yeah.
the parents didn't follow through.
Right.
The parents are not. They're not getting the kid back. It's done.
Yeah.
So now we have this kid that's in foster care, and that child needs a more permanent commitment. Maybe
Mhm.
I don't know.
They need
Maybe
kids need stabilization for sure.
You probably don't want at age 12 and they've had them since 2 that
Right.
continue saying that they're Mar Foster. I don't know how that. Yeah.
well, I didn't.
That's
I
a
mean,
good question, though.
well, because I
Yeah.
was
Okay, the
I was
court
just
makes a decision around 22
22
months.
months.
I was just curious, what would be the motivation to adopt a kid, even if things are going great between you and this foster kid,
Yeah.
and it works for everybody. But if you're going to adopt, then you lose that monthly payment that's
Yeah.
helping support that kid. Why would you adopt, other than your own ethical or
Yeah.
moral
Mhm.
thoughts,
And I think most people that are doing it are that
or
way.
or of
you
that
know,
mindset
yes.
that they're not.
Well,
they're
they
not in it
created
for
a
the
bond
money
with the
necessarily.
kid. They ended up
Yeah.
creating a bond with that kid and stuff.
Yeah.
But even the children we work with, we have this. We sometimes talk to our volunteers and other people because sometimes people come in and they're going to be like, "Oh, I'm going to have this rescue mentality. I'm going to come in. I'm going to help these kids. I'm going to save these kids. These kids are going to come to my house. They're going to see this beautiful home, and they're going to be like, wow, look at all this stuff they have."
And no offense to the kid, but then they get a kid that's unmanageable. Because
Well-
not every kid is
Oh, no.
a perfect
Yeah.
foster kid.
No.
I
No.
imagine not at
Well,
all.
a lot of them have trauma and
Well,
things
they
like
do.
that.
They do.
Yes.
I mean, I
and
personally
issues
know a
and-
couple that, well, they actually adopted he's now an adult, and unfortunately he's in prison at this point. But they always, he came from a horrible background
Mhm.
and never really, that trauma, whatever, just never left him. So he always had issues,
Yes.
and not through his own fault, but
Right.
but they're there,
And we see that a lot.
Mhm.
And I think those are the families we work with too. And now there is like this whole trauma therapy in the mental health field, and they're trying to work on trying to reduce trauma in children. So even for us, like, we don't like to move children around a lot between
Right.
different host homes and
well, because that in
and-
itself is a little.
it
Yeah.
is. It's traumatic.
Yeah.
So even if we can, our goal normally is when we do get a referral is to try to match the families before any respite would need to be done, so they can start building that relationship. So the kids aren't just going to some stranger's home.
Right.
So they're like, oh, okay, I kind of know this person. I've seen them interact with my parents.
Right.
You know what I mean? That we try to make it as less traumatic as it can.
Well,
be for
and
the
like you
kids.
said, even though these foster parents, adopting parents have to get checked out to the nth degree, that still don't mean it ain't scary for the kid.
Right.
I mean, because
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Right.
okay, they didn't ever do anything bad, but
Right.
or at least that
Yeah.
it's on their record.
Right.
But that don't make it less scary for the kid going in a house and you don't know these
No.
people.
Yeah.
And it's
I mean,
what are the unspoken
hell,
rules?
I don't
So
like
we
going in
talk about
houses
that.
I don't know
I
the
know.
people at this age.
Yeah. We talk about that with our host families. So let's think about, we have this household harmony and guidelines paper. What's my boss? When you foster to adopt, you will still get monthly help, and the child will have medical assistance until
Oh,
they're
okay.
18.
So you're not giving all those benefits up
Up.
if you choose to adopt. Why is it so hard to adopt? That was all there's all these kids that need homes,
Well, because
and
the
but you have to
older
jump
kids.
through. But the parents that
And
want to
then-
adopt have to jump through hoops
oops.
to be able to adopt, even if they have no background issues or anything. And it costs. I don't know. In this country, does it? Like I know people who adopted somebody from China, a kid
Mhm.
from, and they paid thousands, tens of thousands of dollars to be able to do that. Why is that? Why are they not able to do it for free?
Yeah, and it's got to
Well-
be really frustrating because then you have people that have kids that probably shouldn't have
Right,
kids.
well-
And the living conditions are horrible.
Right.
And your example was somebody who really put the time and energy into it, making it safe and
Right.
good. And so, yeah, I could.
But why? Yeah, if there's all these children that need homes,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of people that maybe would think about doing it, except
Of the
it's like
cost.
beating your head against a brick wall to be able to jump through the hoops
I think
to
that's
do
why
it.
people foster to adopt,
Okay.
and that's why they
Because
want
it
to do
sort
it
of
because
funnels
it's
it
kind
into
of
that.
well,
Good,
it's kind of the
you-
cheaper way to do it, unless you want to just adopt on your own. And typically, people that want to adopt outside of foster care, I don't know. I might just this is not factual at all, but I would say most of them want like infants or
Yes,
toddlers.
and that, yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
well,
the
yeah.
kids that need to be adopted, when we talk about all these kids, I
Or-
think it's the
or-
older ones. You know, when you
Preteen,
see
teenagers,
yes,
yeah.
the older kids.
Which and they're it's they've been through what they've been through, not through their own fault, but it's a lot harder to teach an old dog
Oh,
new
yeah.
tricks.
Sure, yeah.
So you get an infant, a 1-year-old.
Well, there's a lot of research right now about the trauma that even infants experience
Yeah.
in the womb and
Oh,
how that can
okay.
affect them long term. And even as like
So,
a
like-
1-year-old,
like-
even in the first days of life, like depending on what they're exposed to or whatever and what they've been exposed to in the womb and then their first days, and if there's not and
Yeah.
there's craziness, that can affect them.
We've seen that too. That's
When the child is in case 15 of the last 22 months, they will move to terminate parents' rights. When they move towards preservation, if a foster parent has a child under 10 to 12 years old that they don't want to adopt, they will look for a family to adopt that child.
Yeah. All right.
So
Well,
so they
thanks
could
for all
be-
your information
Yeah,
out there.
that's good.
You've been most informative.
I know. Well, that's what I said to them. I was like, I might be like, can I phone
I mean,
your
nobody
friend?
nobody on our other podcast hardly commented anything. So
I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like, can
Thumbs
I
up
phone
to
a
you
friend?
guys.
I know my team is amazing. I'll tell you
that's
what,
good.
my team is amazing.
Yeah.
We work really well together. We all support each other. We are small and mighty on a shoestring budget, but we do a lot of work.
Nice.
So we have a just to put a plug in real quick.
you're
I'm
welcome
gonna
to
put
do
some
that's
plugs
part
in.
of why
So
we're
we
here.
have a golf tournament that's always a big fundraiser for Safe Families, and that's October 7th. And there's information at the Bethany Christian Services website. If you go to the Bethany Christian Services page, you can find information about our golf tournament
All righty.
Excellent.
in
No, you're-
October
October, yeah.
7th. It's in I think it's Tanglewood or something like that. It's in don't quote me on that. It's in southern Lancaster County. I know that much.
Okay.
I forget the name of the place. I should have had that written down.
Oh, that's
but
all
I
right.
didn't.
They
no,
can
they
find
can-
it.
yeah,
They can
on the
find
website.
that. But no, if you are
Yeah,
a guest, you're welcome to
Yeah,
plug whatever you want to
whatever it
plug.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that because we ran into that in school. Not a lot, but every now and then, where a parent will come in and the kid is acting up, and to the point where they bring it to us and saying, "Hey, we're not sure what to do." And it's not like we just got this kid. We've had this kid since they were little,
Mm-hmm.
and we got them when they were 1 year old. But
And they
you know,
still have-
that is in their head,
It
and
is.
it is now coming out because
It's in their
You talk
DNA
about, like,
and their and all that. Yeah.
you talk about the when you get the kid and how old the kid is.
Right.
I mean, you get that kid anywhere from 9 to 16, and then you got all the physiological stuff going on.
Right,
And,
right.
it might not be so much who they are. It's just they're going through changes. It's
Mhm.
just hard to manage sometimes.
Yeah.
And then throw in all the trauma yet,
Yeah.
and oh my!
And if they were exposed to like drugs or
Yeah,
alcohol
right.
or
Then-
something
I
like
mean,
that
they're-
in
they're
utero,
probably,
then
like,
there
Yeah.
can
Craving
be
or
emotional
withdrawal or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
But it can also depending on what was being developed at that time, and they could have like some emotional delays or
Yeah.
physical delays or learning disabilities and things like that because of what they were exposed to in utero.
And as much as we're talking like the worst case,
Right.
the other side of it is, why would I ever do this then? Well, I would think, and I never fostered a kid, but the connections that I made with the kids in the school district was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Like the connections you made, whether it was because of the uniform or whatever, it didn't matter. They made a connection with you, and you made a small
Impression.
difference. You
Yeah.
made a small difference in their life that was good.
And that's
And as
good,
a
yeah.
foster parent, you can be huge in making a positive influence and
Mhm.
changing their direction.
Right, right.
tremendously.
Yeah.
I do think
But-
though for foster parents though it's like if people want to do it not to adopt and just foster, you have to be pro parent, and you have to like be willing to work with the parents,
Right,
and
yeah.
and
It-
be pro parent, because I think there is a change in some of the thinking process, even in the child welfare, as to try to be more pro-parent. And it is like there is a push more for family stabilization and keeping families together, because
Well,
kids
ultimately,
ultimately want to be
that
with their
that
parents.
would be the perfect outcome.
Right. There are
Right.
times it's not appropriate,
Well,
and
well,
we
right,
totally
right,
recognize
right,
that.
but-
You know.
But in a perfect world, every set of parents would clean up their act, motivated by the fact that they want their kid back.
Right.
Now that doesn't always happen, but in a
Right.
perfect world, that would
Yes.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Well,
Go ahead.
so the other part of this, okay, which I don't know if you want to touch base with anything else, but can you just briefly, because we've been at this a while, and I don't want to, hold you up, but the child abuse side of the world,
Mm-hmm.
okay, things have changed in the last since 2015, somewhere in there.
The Sandusky
When-
things.
Well,
Is that what you mean?
that kind of kicked it off, and then everybody needed a clearance, which
Yes.
included the
Mandated.
Sunday school teachers
Yes.
needed a clearance, and then then that kicked.
Even if you just helped at Bible school.
Yes.
Or,
Oh,
Yeah,
it's pretty much any time you're with a kid
Yeah,
nowadays.
and-
you have to
but I
have
gotta,
clearance.
I
Even for me to go into my kids' schools and things like that, like,
oh,
and
but
to
volunteer,
like
yeah.
volunteer,
But
I have
my
to have all my
whole,
clearances.
this is always what I thought about that. If you wanted to help at Sunday school, or you wanted to do Bible school, or help at a school, or do anything where you now need a child clearance, so you go get that clearance. Two things always entered my mind. One, if you've already been arrested for something like that, why would you even do it knowing your clearance is going to come back and show that? Secondly,
Hold on, before you go past that.
okay,
Okay, wouldn't believe how many reports we get from the gun shops in the area that somebody applied for the gun, right?
that has a felony.
That has a felony, and
Okay.
they're required to give that to the
So
cops and the
they were just
detectives.
thinking they could slip through the
I
system.
have no idea
Yeah.
what they're thinking, but
Or
that
you
is a
know, maybe if they
violation,
didn't
so-
live in Pennsylvania, and they're an implant, and we're not checking other states.
Yeah,
Well, maybe,
yeah.
maybe.
You know, because it's the
But
PA
then-
child abuse
But
criminal.
the only then I always
but
used to
unless
say
you
I used
haven't
to
lived
say to
here
my
for a
wife when
certain amount
she
of time.
have to get these clearances to help it. So I said the other thing about that is you could pass every clearance until the day you get caught doing something bad. So you could be an expert manipulator
Well, you know, in the police
and not
department,
have
how
any
many-
record whatsoever.
Well, because in even the foundation or the burden of proof and to prove that the abuse happened or whatever, you know, I mean, there were times when I was doing child abuse and neglect investigations, and it was like we just didn't have enough to make it.
It's more like your word against
Oh, yeah.
theirs.
Yes,
And
and so there is
Yeah.
so there is that, you know, and I mean we try to be as diligent as we can, and that's why we want to see the kids in the house every week. You know,
Well,
we
right,
want to like
and-
speak to them
right,
privately
get
if we can.
their output.
Yes, you know,
Yeah.
and the parents are seeing the kids and things like that. So I like the clearance part because I think.
Oh, I'm not saying it's a bad
It's-
thing. It just
Well, no,
there
but I
was-
understand what you're saying. Though. I mean, I do.
Well, and
Because there's a lot of people out there that are walking around that
Yeah,
have
absolutely.
never
But you
been
could-
caught. I mean,
you could you don't have any criminal history, but you could walk by the bank one day and decide I'm going to rob the bank.
well, that too.
You know what I mean?
Or-
It's your
or you
mindset,
could have-
how- what
you
you
could
could
have-
you could never figured on that somebody was
You
going
could
to
have
do that.
you could have abused 30 kids and never got caught.
Right.
So your record is going
Right.
to look spotless.
Well, and I like to
and
think
that's
that.
how perps.
Well, they
I
do.
know.
well,
Right.
I mean, you know,
they have
there's
they have a real-
professionals.
they
I mean,
know
it's
how
sad
to
to
groom
say, but
kids.
yeah,
they know
yeah.
how to.
Well,
they
that's
know
why,
what to look for in children. They know what the family life situation might look for, you know, and things like that. And
It's a sad situation, but
I
it
remember the one
exists.
time I was at
It's-
Long's Park with my sons, and there was this man there, and I was definitely being judgy by his looks and things like that, and he just was odd.
But yet you agreed
And-
to come in my basement.
That's right.
That's a little
sketchy.
Well, you know me, I like the
How
red
did
flags.
you know you're ever? Maybe you were never leaving here. Who knows? But we got it all on video. We're safe.
Yeah.
That's right. We are safe. That's right. That's right. That's right. We are in a scary basement. I know my way around this neighborhood. I used to live down the street.
All right. I don't want to like
No, you're
get
fine.
too long here.
No,
Yeah.
just real quick.
Okay.
Just you go ahead.
Oh,
finish your
with this
thought.
guy.
Yeah, okay.
So he was like sketchy, and so I was like, you know, there with my kids, and I go to the guy, and I'm like, "Which one's yours?" And he was like, "Oh, this little girl. She's my neighbor, and she's like, she lives downstairs, and the mom is a single mom, works like 2 jobs, and I just like to help this mom out. And I was just thinking, like, this guy's probably groomed. Like, in my mind, I'm thinking this guy's groomed because he knows
Well,
he knows what to target. He
Yeah.
knows the
Right.
situations and
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah. So,
so-
yeah, they are out there, and at least in the professional school world, I like to think that there is some checks. The admin has been there for a long time, and they have something in the back guy's like, wait a minute, this something
Okay,
is not
so-
right.
right.
And are you left alone with that kid just right out of the box? Probably not. You're going to be with some other people that are going to see how you handle things and how you're talking to them, and
Mhm.
which then forces the bad guy. That's why for me the online safety was so important in teaching kids, because now they're bypassing everybody and they're going to their phone
Yeah.
and they're grooming them
It is
through the
crazy.
phone
Yeah.
and getting
Yeah.
them to meet and
Mhm.
that, so they're bypassing everything
Yeah.
and going right to
Right. Yeah.
right to where they know they can get to
They
them
are.
and being their friend and
Right.
saying, oh yeah, I'm 13 too, or
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
that's that's a whole nother discussion on child abuse.
Well, and
because
actually-
there's frustration. A coach sees a parent acting inappropriately with a kid as they come into a practice, and then he does his required reporting,
Mhm.
because it reached that level, and the next week he sees either the same thing or the same parent with the kid. Like, well, how is this, and why isn't this being dealt with? And well, there's a lot of things. Did it reach the level that somebody could do something?
Oh yeah.
And maybe something was done. You're never going to know,
Right.
because it's kids and it's private and it's not allowed to be
Yeah.
explained.
Yeah.
to
And when you
anybody.
make that report, they're not going to tell you what
No.
the outcome was
Mm-mm.
of it. They're not going to say, "Oh, this is what," and then
Right.
And I think people think that, but no.
Yes.
I mean,
they think, oh, what's the end? We can see when John down the road was arrested for drugs, his name was in the paper. He went to jail. Now, why can't we hear what's going on here? And a lot of people don't understand that, and that's frustrating for
Yeah.
them.
Right.
We
Yeah.
know what
Yeah.
the rules are, so
Well, right.
we know what
Yeah.
to expect. So that's a whole nother discussion.
Well,
as to-
that's
because and that's one reason why I think Sherman Youth got so overwhelmed in the last couple
well,
of years,
yeah.
because the amount of reports we knew, because we were getting them, and anything that happened in school, it was kicked to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, oh my, the amount of reports.
Yeah, when they
rolling, it was
started,
just,
when they changed everything, because it was
Mhm.
based Sandusky kind of kicked
yes,
all
it
that
did,
off, and
yeah,
then
mhm.
more
and not
people.
that it's bad,
no,
it was just overwhelming.
yeah, it is, and
It
there,
was
I know a lot of the
overwhelming.
systems are overwhelmed.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
All right. Well, I'd like to thank Candace for
Yes,
taking some
thank
time
you.
to come in here. I'd like
Yeah.
to thank her team out there for
Yep.
pitching in some good
yes,
information.
Thank you, ladies.
Mhm.
And you're welcome to come back anytime, and we can pick up. We did a
Okay.
lot of the foster care. We
Yeah.
barely touched the child abuse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can
You're
do
welcome back
Yeah,
anytime
yeah,
you want to come
absolutely.
back,
All
and we
right, that
can
would be
pick
great.
right up there. And
That. Maybe I can get my girls to come out. too.
yeah,
We can
yeah,
just do like a
we can get
whole
another
thing.
chair too.
Oh,
Yeah,
my
2 more
God.
chairs here.
Yeah.
We'll move the curtain, and you can sit on the couch. That's,
There we go.
there you go.
And then you guys can have your podcast from our golf tournament that day.
Yeah.
Oh, we can
there
do
you
that.
go, yeah.
As long as you got an internet
Here we
connection.
go.
And a cart. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
cart,
drive
a
around.
little bit
Yeah,
of beer every
yeah,
now and
we
then,
go.
but,
I have a cart anyways.
yeah.
Yeah. So one of the reasons you wanted to do this when you did, which was April, was
Was because
because
April is Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month.
Oh,
So throughout the month of April, you might see like different pinwheels that represent children who have been abused or have gone, or that have been abused, like in the foster care system, and that might be in the foster care system, or reports that have been made on children. So just trying to get safe families out there, because we are considered like child abuse prevention program. And just trying to get the word out there that there are alternatives to foster care that are trying to support families, and we're always looking for donations and host families.
All righty.
Wonderful.
Well, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
We're
Thank
going to
you.
cut out here, and we'll
Yes.
maybe pick this up in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, that was fun. That was easy.
It is easy.
I didn't mind that.
No.
It's,
Yeah.
it's no
Not
different
scary,
than
and
it's no different than sitting at the
At the
bar
bar.
chit chatting.
No,
Yeah.
you kidding?
It's-
Except you're not interrupted now with
Right, with
getting
drinks.
Well, right,
and
yeah.
stuff like
You
that.
can
You
focus on your
concentrate,
discussion.
Yeah, that's why I enjoy.